Hey, it's Luke at ThePageisPrinted, and I'm back with another review. So from looking around, you might be able to tell what we're going to be talking about today. But it is this. It's Leia, Princess of Alderaan, written by Claudia Gray. It came out last week. So I should start by saying that I am a massive Princess Leia fan. I'm a massive Star Wars nerd, and Princess Leia is my favourite character, as you can see by her merchandise. And I've got many, many Leia t-shirts, to the extent that I actually have a tattoo on my arm. So, quite a big fan. I don't know, she was a big inspiration to me when I was a kid. She was clever and intelligent and very sarcastic. And I knew that I was never going to be a kind of cocky, dashing rogue like Han Solo. But I also didn't want to be a boring, whining farm boy like Luke Skywalker. So Leia seemed the best option for a role model. And Carrie Fisher as well was a big kind of inspiration. Her books are brilliantly funny. She's wonderful to watch in interviews. And she was a really quite inspirational woman who coped with a lot of stuff with great humour and who I miss quite a lot. But yeah, so what appears to be the case is that the head honchos at Disney have realised that Leia is one of the more interesting characters in their back catalogue. And as a result, we've had a few books with Leia in over the last couple of years. There's one called Bloodline, which was published last year and was set between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, and really dealt with Leia in the kind of New Republic Senate, dealing with the revelation that she was Darth Vader's daughter. She knew that, but it was a secret, and when it became public knowledge, it was obviously quite a scandal that she had to get through. And that's a really good read, and is also written by Claudia Gray. The year before that, Claudia Gray wrote a book called Lost Stars about the Star Wars universe, which again was, much like this one, young adult fiction. And that featured basically a pair of characters, one who was an Imperial, one who was a rebel, and you followed them from before... from A New Hope, essentially, through Empire, through Return of the Jedi, through to the Battle of Jakku, prior to The Force Awakens. And it was a great read. It was really, really good and really got me excited for the kind of new era of Star Wars books. Now the expanded universe has been put to bed. So yeah, Claudia Gray is a wonderful writer, and this is categorised as young adult fiction. But if you're a Star Wars fan and you don't see yourself fitting into that young adult bracket, don't worry, it's a really good read in its own right. What's quite interesting is that it does expand on stuff that hasn't really been covered all that much before. So you get to see Leia's life on Alderaan, which hasn't really been touched upon, and wasn't massively touched upon in the old expanded universe either. You got glimpses of her kind of life when she was a child with Winter. Sorry, not the season Winter. Her best friend and bodyguard as a child in the expanded universe was called Winter, but that is no longer canon. So instead, you get a really interesting insight into her life growing up in the palace with her father, the Viceroy of Alderaan, who you'll have seen in what was he in? Revenge of the Sith. And he was also in Rogue One, Bail Organa, played by Jimmy Smits. So he's in here quite a lot. What's interesting is that Leia's mother, Breha, is also a main character here. And she's a really interesting one because we haven't really seen all that much of her at all in the past, or had her character explored at all. The focus has always been on, Leia remembering her birth mother, which still doesn't make sense. But Breha herself is a very interesting character. She's the ruler of Alderaan. She's a queen. And it's interesting to see how she juggles her duties as a queen with her duties as being a mother and a wife. And also, as we find out, as working with Bail to form a rebellion, which is what is kind of the underlying current of this whole book. It's set prior to A New Hope, so the Imperials are very much in charge. And whilst it's clear that neither Leia or her family like them, they do have to kind of toe the line to a certain extent to avoid being, what happens in A New Hope, getting completely blown up. The plot itself has Leia, when she's 16, basically in Alderaan, the future ruler goes through a ceremony where they declare kind of certain goals they're going to achieve. She then goes off and tries to do these in conjunction with a group of kind of fellow 16-year-olds. One of which, interestingly, is a character called Amelin Hodo, who is going to be appearing in The Last Jedi when that comes out. So you get an insight to her. You get an insight into her earlier on. She's a character who's going to be played by Laura Dern, so she already looks very interesting. And this book kind of really builds on what you may have seen in the trailers so far, and marks her out as quite a unique and interesting character. In terms of Last Jedi stuff, this is marked in the Journey to Star Wars The Last Jedi kind of category. With that, Leia visits the planet of Crate, which will be in The Last Jedi 2. It looks a very interesting visual planet in terms of how it's shown up in the trailer so far. It's got this white surface with red soil underneath. And as you find out, it's a salt planet, so it's covered in a thick layer of salt. But when that's broken through, the soil is this bright red, which looks stunning in the trailers, and I imagine will in the film. And it's quite an interesting place that Leia goes to in here too. The characterization of Leia is great. It's easy to forget in A New Hope that she's really, really very young. And despite the fact that Luke Skywalker loses his adoptive parents quite early on in that film, Leia kind of helps him through that, despite the fact that she's lost an entire planet and pretty much everything she's known. So that is interesting, and this kind of deals with her strength and her independence as a character. But you also get to see her family ties and kind of understand what makes her the woman she is in the trilogy and in the later films as well. In fact, I would say actually you get a real insight in here as to why Leia is like she is in The Force Awakens, and I imagine in The Last Jedi as well. The combination of the childhood with the hardships that she's faced later in life that kind of made her the woman she becomes. But the plot is great. There's a bit of a romance, which is always good. It's very good to read. I wish they would make a Leia prequel film as well, to be honest, given that we're going to get a Han Solo one, which I can't wait for, but I think a Leia one would just be fascinating. It might not have massive kind of space battles, and it may not have any kind of lightsabers, but to see her kind of being this princess who actually gets involved in kind of espionage and rebellion on a grand scale would, I think, be very interesting. And also, due to her position, she interacts with higher characters in the Star Wars universe. So in here, there are some interesting moments where she's with Grand Moff Tarkin, because, as you know from A New Hope, it's quite clear that she does know him when she first meets him. She talks about recognising his stench. So yeah, it's nice to kind of see their interactions here, and their first interaction as well. Which is good to read. But yeah, it's out at the moment, so pick it up. It's got a great cover, so pick it up for that, if not anything, but also pick it up to read about a fantastic character and her origins as a rebel hero. It's really good. That is it for me today. If you want to comment, you can email me, lukevmarlow@gmail.com. You can like and subscribe and comment below. Hit me up on Instagram at lukevmarlow or Twitter at lukevictorm, or head over to my website, ThePageisPrinted.com. And I'll see you all soon.